What is happening, y'all? James Hancock here. I'm very late to the party on this one, but I wanted to give everyone a heads up about an absolutely hysterical new show, Los Espookys, on HBO. The show is written by and stars Julio Torres, Fred Armisen, and Ana Fabrega, and the show is about a group of friends united by their love of horror who end up forming a business by creating horror effects for parties or fake exorcisms, basically whatever their clients require. I stumbled upon it totally by accident when I was checking out the first episode for Euphoria. Before the episode started, HBO showed the trailer for Los Espookys, and then after a couple of minutes of Euphoria, which seemed to shamelessly wallow in its bummer aesthetic in an almost masturbatory fashion, I totally bailed and switched over to this much more enjoyable show. Admittedly, reviewing comedy is very tough to do. The genre is so completely subjective, but the legendary critic and film historian Mark Kermode, he has an excellent tactic for judging any comedy, at least when it comes to movies. He calls it the 6 laugh test, where basically if you laugh out loud involuntarily 6 times, the comedy's working. I can't remember the last time I saw a comedy in the theater that actually passed the 6 laugh test, but the first episode of Los Espookys, which is only 26 minutes long, it managed to pass the 6 laugh test within the first few minutes. I was so instantly hooked that I completely forgot to take notes for the purposes of this review, but that's a fantastic problem to have. Anytime I'm watching a show or a movie just as a fan and not as someone who needs to find fresh content to discuss on a podcast or a video, that is my equivalent of Mark Kermode's 6 laugh test. I probably could have waited until tomorrow night for this review after episode 2 airs, but I know I'm going to be up to my ears reviewing season 2 of Dark on Netflix, so I'm glad I went ahead and tackled this show now. If you haven't seen the trailer yet, I should give you a heads up that the show is almost completely in Spanish, and while that might be a stumbling block for some, not to worry, you get used to it so quickly that you end up being distracted and confused whenever the characters suddenly speak in English. I studied Spanish off and on throughout my childhood, well into college, even spent a summer in Spain as well, so I'm occasionally guilty of that really annoying habit where English speakers tend to overpronounce their words in Spanish. For the purposes of this review, I will try to avoid that habit of mine, but I apologize in advance if I come across as a total douchebag when I'm pronouncing particular words. At any rate, when it comes to the plot of the show, it really gets underway when the character Reynaldo, played by Bernardo Velasco, throws a horror-themed party for his sister's quinceañera. Soon he finds himself being recruited by a priest to stage a fake exorcism so that the priest can reclaim the spotlight from his younger rival. And for this job, he recruits all of his closest friends who also love the horror genre. He gets Tati, played by series co-creator Ana Fabrega. He recruits a dentist named Ursula, and most importantly, he grabs Andres, played by series co-creator Julio Torres. This is my official introduction to his work, but I'm an instant fan. Apparently, he's been one of the best writers at SNL for several years now, but I haven't watched SNL on a regular basis in like 25 years. I struggle watching anything where you have to sit through nearly an hour of nonsense, hoping that maybe, perhaps, you might see one great sketch. In any event, I'm thrilled to have discovered Torres because he absolutely kills it in the show. He plays the heir to a chocolate empire who's dating this vapid fitness model named Juan Carlos, who says he only wants to be surrounded by beautiful things. And while his boyfriend might be disgusted by his interest in the macabre, Julio Torres' character has always known that he has a darkness inside him, something he reminds everyone of on a regular basis. At any rate, their first major job is a total success, and the episode ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger where they're invited to spend the night in a haunted house as part of this challenge to earn the inheritance of an eccentric millionaire who recently died. So obviously I have no way of knowing if this show is going to be able to sustain the laughs in the coming weeks, but I am absolutely all in for the time being. I've been a huge fan of Fred Armisen for years, but with this show, he is completely on fire, both as a writer as well as the character Tico. But what I love most about this show is this deliriously campy world that the show uses as its setting. Everything about this world is amped up to an extreme, in particular the news where the character Gregoria Santos constantly reminds us of all the completely bananas bonkers events taking place in the world that these characters occupy. This is a show where with every line of dialogue, with every action taken by the characters, with every scene is trying to make you howl with laughter. It doesn't always succeed, but I couldn't be more of a fan of the style and tone that they've chosen to use for this particular show. So if you're like me, if you're totally bored and frustrated by the last few years of comedy movies, I strongly urge you to check out this show. You'll know within a few minutes whether or not it's your thing, but there are only 6 episodes total, so hopefully the show will find a decent-sized audience over the next few weeks. But I think that's all I have for now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. But if you enjoyed this reaction and review, please consider liking the video, giving the channel a subscribe. If you want to talk more about comedy or HBO or whatever, you can always find me on Twitter at Coldbrex, or leave me a comment in the comments below. Can't thank you enough for watching. I really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.